said, I want you back in school. And I said, Lord, I'm 76 years old. And he said, I know how old you are. I created you. And I said, yeah, that's right, you did. So after the church, I went down and spoke to Brother Paul Wade, and I said, Brother Paul, the Lord really spoke to me tonight. He wants me back in school. And Brother Paul said, well, I didn't think my sermon was that good. And I said, well, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I didn't hear a word you said. I was just for the Lord. But I went back that next morning, that was Sunday night. I went and enrolled in New Orleans Seminary because it was in Marietta, Georgia, at Dr. Nelson Price's church. And then it was later moved to Decatur, and now it's back in Johnson Ferry. But I went for about 4.5 years, and I just took one subject when I wanted to take and what I wanted to do. And finally, one night, God spoke to me again. Now, I didn't hear God speak audibly, but I knew He was talking to me. And He said, I want you to finish school. I want you to go on campus down in New Orleans and get your master's degree, because I have something for you to do. He didn't tell me what it was, where it was. So I went on campus the last 1.5 years and went to school, and it was 5 weeks, about 6 weeks before I was to graduate on May the 17th, 1996, that Dr. Harrison O'Lang from Africa, from Liberia, not Liberia, was from Tanzania, came on campus, and my mentor said, go talk to him. I said, well, he's not going to hire a native 1.5-year-old woman to go teach, and in the first place, and the International Mission Board wouldn't appoint me in the second place. But God had other plans, so I went and talked to him, and we hit it off, and he said, you put in an application, and I'll put in a request, because I want you to come over and teach. And I said, well, I'm almost 82. He said, I don't care if you're 122. I want you to come teach. So that was the last of March. About the last of April, I put in my request to the IMB, International Mission Board in Richmond, and in less than 2 weeks, I heard back that I had been accepted. And I was amazed. But you know, God has a plan for each of our lives. He has a plan for each one of you, and it's a perfect plan for you. And you know, each one of us is a missionary, and that was a really neat thing you had there. But so I didn't hear anything. I graduated May the 17th. I didn't hear anything in June, July, and right before my 82nd birthday, I called Richmond. I said, what about my application to go overseas and teach at the seminary in Tanzania? And the woman on the phone said, aren't you in Tanzania? And I said, I'm sitting here in Flowery Branch, Georgia. And she said, let me call you back. That was on Friday. She called me back Monday and said, can you come Wednesday for orientation? Said, you have been in Liberia for many months, and so you know the culture. But so I said, yes, I can be there. So I went up to Richmond, and for 3 days, there were 52 people up there to be appointed as missionaries around the world. And they went to see where they were needed and where God was leading them to go. But I already knew where I was going, so I didn't come back to the MLC, the Missionary Learning Center, and out from Richmond. They go back for 2 weeks, 2 months training, and so they did that. But in 2 weeks, I was on my way to Tanzania. Now, in 1985, do you remember when we were in partnership with Liberia? Yes. Georgia was in partnership with Liberia, and I had never flown except from Atlanta to Birmingham. And you get to Birmingham before you leave Atlanta because of time change. But I got on the plane after my husband died, and the day after Christmas, I went to Liberia to teach in a youth camp. And I was supposed to stay 2 weeks, and I stayed 6 weeks. And then I went back in about 3 months to speak at a women's convention, the national convention there. And then the last 8 times I went to build churches, and not one person turned me down when I got the mission team to go. And most of them were men. We had some women go to cook, but the men went over there, and not one person turned me down. So I knew that God was in it. The first 2 churches we built, I was known as Mud Mother. They gave me a t-shirt, Mud Mother. I mixed the mortar for the men, and that was hard working with 8 men to mix in mortar. But on the 3rd church, one of the men got sick, and I said, oh, I can lay those blocks. I had watched them, And so Jimmy Fox, who is from Calhoun, said, he was our head block man, and he said, well, you take the pulpit end of a church and get you a strong African man and to help you lift those blocks. So we did, from the 3rd church to the 8th church. There was 6 churches that I did that God helped me to do the pulpit in. But the last time I went over, and I did go over and teach for 3 years. I lived over there, and then I went back in 2001 through 2007. That was taught during the summer or in the spring quarter. The last time I was there, in this past March, a student came up, a new student said, Coco, they call me Coco, which is Swahili for old woman. Coco, but they're very respectful for old people. He said, Coco, how old are you? And I said, how old do you think I am? I'll never do that again. And he said, without batting an eye, he said, you're 120. And I said, do I look that old? He said, yes, you look 120. But they're so honest, and I tell you, I fell in love with them. And you know, where God called you to serve, He gives you a love for the people. Amen. And when you sang that, Make Me a Sanctuary, we sang that, and I was weeping because I was remembering the students that I had taught in Africa. But I have some people here with me tonight that I brought from Panama. Miss Panama, will you come? I've got 2 from Panama. I've got one with a yellow dress and then one with a green dress. No, you're Miss Dupree. These 2 are young ladies from Panama. I went to Panama 8 times. We built 5 churches down there.